I lived in New York City for 40 years, and this past July, I moved to Moab, Utah. Have you heard of it? Have you heard of Moab?
I've been there a couple of times because I went to graduate school at Colorado State.
Where's Colorado State?
It's in Fort Collins.
Fort Collins, right. I lived years ago, I lived in Greeley for about 6 months.
Okay, so yeah, very close. Yeah,
Oh,
Moab's not that close, but close enough that I did the drive a couple of times.
oh, you've been here?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Not many people have, but it's getting more and more popular and famous. So, this would have been in the late 80s. I just took some time out and was investigating a lot of different things. My world had kind of turned upside down, and I was in sort of a retreat mode and just started exploring new things and went off in a very much a whole new direction because I hadn't really been a feminist activist before then. So, this would have been. Let's see, in the early 80s, I had been doing anti-racist activism and anti-war activism. So this was in New York City, and that was my involvement. But I hadn't necessarily thought of feminism because I'd been a feminist since I was teething. That came with the program. My mother was an early feminist who fought for her rights. She was one of the first women to get their own credit card back in the day. So my mother was a strong woman, and I had her spirit in my DNA, and so I never thought of feminism per se. And then when I did sort of a reboot, that would have been in when was that? Maybe the early 80s, no, late 80s. Sorry, not that everybody really cares the dates, but that would have been the early 90s. And I started really looking into feminism. And then I segued into, of all the different strands of feminism, I segued into ecofeminism. That resonated with me the most. And the kind of ecofeminist analysis that I came to very much incorporated a spirituality. And ecofeminism, the way it's kind of different from other feminism is that it's one of its core thesis, which is the domination of women and the domination of nature are fundamentally connected. So I began to have this very strong feeling of nature and other animals, which I hadn't necessarily cultivated before. And that was a whole new uh, big light bulb idea for me, a major shift. So, ecofeminism, had I just gone into more of a radical feminist route or liberal feminist route, I don't think I would have come to animal issues, animal liberation, animal rights, if not animal liberation. Um, and and so I was open to it. And my brother was living in Berkeley, California. So he had long ago become a vegetarian. And he visited me during this time of my retreat. I took about a year off and was just doing a lot of self work, exploratory work, spiritual work. And it just dovetailed kind of perfectly. Him not eating meat. It's like, what? Why? He introduced me to Jeremy Bentham. So I started seeing a rational analysis of it. And then I read Carol Adams's book, The Sexual Politics of Meat. There were a lot of excellent women ahead of me, and she really made a huge difference for me. So those kind of just came together, and then I became more involved with other groups, and Feminists for Animal Rights was in New York, and so I became an editor for a short time with that magazine, but was involved with Bauman. So it all just kind of came together, and they were of a piece. The connection with women and animals makes sense for the domination of nature and the domination of women, and then just walking your talk, and peace and nonviolence. So that's kind of where I came from.
Yeah. And what about the organization that you started, the reading group, Eve? Because I'm only getting secondhand through looking at the old FAR newsletters, and a few of the Eve newsletters are out there. So where did that come about, and what was unique about that?
Well, it was a very interesting organization in the early 90s for about 4 years. My sister Colleen and I organized it. And Eve stands for Ecofeminist Visions Emerging. And I felt very passionate about this form of feminism. And so um, we had a lot of activities going. Every week, we had something each month for about 4 years. So the flagship core of the group was our monthly study groups. So we would take a reading. At the time, there were two very good books on ecofeminism, and they were more for the mainstream because most of the work out there was very academic oriented. So these two books we kind of just like clung to, and then we started finding articles. So we basically, it was very grassroots. I would call it a grassroots intellectual activist group. And so women, we didn't have a core group per se. There wasn't like a president and a vice president and that kind of membership, no 501c3. We just put the call out there and people would come to our homes, women, almost exclusively women. I don't think a man ever came, although so we did do workshops like at colleges and stuff, and men participated in those. But for all of our activities, it was very women oriented. And so the monthly study groups were fascinating because we would focus on one topic in what we were looking at it. It could be men, urban planning. I mean, this was there's probably like 30 of these groups that we had, or the study group. Um, what else? Dreams, urban living, um, um, Pacific Islander women and nuclear energy, the different strands of feminism. I mean, it was a whole motley array of things. And we tried our best to look at it through the prism of ecofeminism as we were all kind of learning and kind of also simultaneously formulating an analysis of what grassroots ecofeminism is, as opposed to, I don't think most of the women were reading academic ecofeminism, but my sister and I were. And then after each group was there, we'd write up a newsletter. So we have this whole huge list of topics, all from an ecofeminist lens, and various strands of women, because all different kinds of women would come to our meetings. It wasn't just all middle class white women. We had women of color. It was all women, but it was a large array of ages. So and it was interesting. So we had that. And then of the same kind of core group of people on our mailing list, once a month we had a Mary Daly study group, but it was a read aloud group because I found the poetic quality of her writing of gynecology just extraordinary, and it lends itself
Mm.
to just reading aloud. So that's what we did. We read aloud together, and then we would just sit suffused with those words and what it meant. And um, she really is the backbone of so much of feminism. That book, Gynecology, more than anything. And we did actually have Mary come to New York and gave a lecture with her, which was sold out. It was packed, and that was kind of exciting. And then we usually did some kind of monthly get together for just fun, or maybe a protest, or maybe see a film. So that was sort of a freebie kind of thing. Then we did what we called guerrilla graffiti. And we would go out into the streets of New York with our magic markers, and we would just do like advertising graffiti hits. And we tried not to be doctrinaire about it. We tried to be funny and whimsical and witty, and we would just get billboards and just mark them up. Instead of just saying something like feminism, we would analyze it. We would look and see what was there, deconstruct it, and then see how we can put our advertising copy hats and see what we could lend to it in an interesting way. So that was always fun. And we had to be on the lookout because sometimes we got chased away by either police or fellow citizens who didn't like what we were obviously doing. So that was fun. One other thing we did each month was Celine's Circle, which was a menstrual circle. And we got together once a month. We all ate beets so that afterwards we were all peeing blood. And we had different themes. What was your first period like? What was your most embarrassing moment? What health things do you have to offer? So those were that was the energy for at least 4 years in the early 90s in New York, bringing people together.
But wait, was when you're doing the magic markering, was that part of the Gorilla Girls group, or are you separate from that?
Completely separate.
It's
That
interesting.
was a whole, yeah, they were the whole more sophisticated art scene
Oh
downtown
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
who,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Wow. All right. So that was all over the place. That's really, really exciting. So what happened? Did it just kind of run its course, or?
It did kind of run its course. I got kind of broke and had to go uh, into the work mode. Not that I wasn't working then, but I wasn't seriously working. And it just had kind of run its course after 4 years of once a month having to churn out a newsletter. We got kind of tired of that. So I kind of took a hiatus for a while and just really mostly worked. I still became it kept being involved. I'd go to protests and I had my fingers in it, but I was not actively involved at that time, just for personal reasons, time out time.
What's the role of your sister, Colleen? Was she also taking some leadership here?
Well, we're twins. So, as identical twins, we've always done things together. And even when we'd write, we'd sit there together and just kind of both of us work the keyboard. I'd kind of give it to her, she'd give it to me.
Ew.
Well,
Okay.
we often speak in stereo. She'll start to say something. We'll say the same thing to somebody at the same time, so they're getting it in stereo. So we're very much alike. And she was not. She was far more politically active earlier in issues of race and anti-war. She's a lawyer, so she had done activism with South Africa, the anti-apartheid movement, and then when that became popular, she moved on. This would have been the early 80s, moved on to working for Palestine before probably around the time of Beirut when the Israelis occupied Beirut. That's when she got involved with that and sort of moved out of the South African apartheid because it had become so popular and moved on to Palestine, which had not yet had any kind of focus. And then when I did my own kind of retreat and started looking at feminism, I remember back in the 70s when we were in college, she had already gone through feminism, and I hadn't necessarily, but we were always kind of feminist, but she had a deeper analysis. So when I brought it this time around, she was very open to it, fortunately, because some things you don't know, if your friends, let alone your sister, is going to be on the same page. And she was definitely right there with me. It was as new for her as it was for me, and we both explored together.
Very cool. Um, so you have this pretty broad perspective now over a really pivotal. So as you mentioned, if you had gone into liberal or radical feminism, you may not have fallen into these looking at connections of nature and animals, probably still the case today. But then, of course, the 1980s and 90s is sort of an explosion of looking at those particular intersections. So, looking at the broader sort of history of second wave feminism and even looking into like today's feminism, so what historically do you think have been some really important barriers, specifically for ecofeminism?
Um, well, I think for ecofeminism, before we get to more animal rights and vegan issues, um, it's just very marginalized because it has. I think it's because it has more of a walk your talk approach.
Uh,
That it's not as willing to be co-opted by the status quo and mainstream politics. Especially liberal feminists. I mean, Hillary Clinton to me is like a paradigm of that, where you can get ahead and acting like, well, it's for women, but a lot of times we see women now making male decisions. They're acting like men. They're not really women, but they're using feminism to get their way, and that's not the kind of feminism I ever saw or ever thought it should be. And so what they're doing is taking on the mantle of toxic masculinity and then just becoming toxic feminists without acknowledging it. So that, to me, I knew was not a direction I was going to go in because I've always been anti-war, anti-capitalist, and pro we the people. And so to me, liberal feminism is just using your card, your female card, to make it in the male world and not supposedly try to change it. But to me, it seemed to be more conforming than anything else. So that was out. And then if we look at radical feminism, I really appreciate a lot what Mary Daly was saying, but I was truly shocked when I really got to know her that, and I'm not saying this is all radical feminist, but I was very shocked that she honestly did hate men and voiced that to me. And I saw her as an ecofeminist, and that's what helped me better understand the difference between radical feminists and ecofeminists, because I think there is a spirituality there, which her being so deeply connected to the church from Boston College in her own background, I could see that rejection because I rejected my Catholicism too. It was raised a Catholic, but I did not see it replaced with a true kind of spirituality, which you can't dislike anybody. And this was before even the whole trans thing, where you can define your own pronoun. This social engineering, I think, of what is gender. Even before that was there, um, she had a binary view that those are men and we're women, and we're seeing today, or a lot of people seem to think that it's not necessarily that fluid. So how I think I remember asking her, "Well, isn't your cat male?" And because she had a cat, I think she called him Tom. I could be wrong about that, but that was my thinking. I definitely challenged her on that. And I don't remember what she said. I think I was just so taken with me challenging her. But so that really was a turnoff for me. And I'm not saying it was all radical feminists, but I also would go to the Michigan Women's Music Festival. Do you know about that at all?
No.
Oh, I did a really good write-up of it because it ended up shutting down. But there were a lot of women there who, oh, I can't believe you don't know about Michigan. Michigan was a cultural landmark. I'll give you, not that you're going to print it or anything, but I'll give you what I wrote up because somebody asked me to write about it, and I ended up writing about it and just relived those memories. I must have gone to Michigan like 3 or 4 summers. Well, so if people don't know it, what Michigan was and it went on for years. I think over 20 years. I can't remember when or how long, but it was women from all over the country, all over the world, who were coming to this place in Michigan in the woods and having a week of just all women, no men allowed.
Mhm.
And so I saw a lot of different forms. I thought it was going to be eco-feminist the whole time, but there were a lot of different forms of feminism there. And it was very much, I had a lot of lesbians. So I had not been around that many lesbians before. So that was, it's a whole culture as I learned more about that. But Michigan was like Woodstock for women, and not
Mhm.
necessarily feminists either, and not totally lesbian, but it was just a whole women's fest that was just very exciting to be there with all the first thing I'd get there, I'd take off my shirt and go bare breasted. It just felt like, you're in female land, her land, as I think her name's Frances Gilmore wrote that book called Her Land. And it was wonderful. But how it eventually shut down was over the whole transgender movement. We're getting kind of away from veganism and feminism. Um, Michigan was definitely vegetarian, and the new generations of women coming in were making fun of all of the old dykes and goddessy kind of culture, and that eventually shut it down because the organizers were not going to allow that. So who knows where all of that has gone now? But Michigan did spawn other sort of feminist festivals And so the festies would come together, and it was very inspiring. So that had a big impact on me as well, because there were a lot of ecofeminists at Michigan, as opposed to in the outer world where feminism had become more co-opted and watered down. Whereas at Michigan, they were full blown, but there seemed to be this battling between is it going to be more eco-feminist goddessy, or is it going to go this other new, more radical edge path that I didn't relate to at all? And the two founders didn't want to either, and they shut it down, which is unfortunate. It went that way.
Well, you kind of hinted at some of the intersections there about increased difficulties when you bring species into the mix. And interesting, you said that this festival um, also was vegetarian, and I have heard of some of the debates on whether to include trans folks or not, and just not specifically about that one, and it's certainly worth researching. But what happens then when you bring veganism into this? Because I actually saw some debate between you and I think Batya in maybe in the 90s and some FAR newsletters about whether or not that FAR should be explicitly vegan or stick with vegan friendly but vegetarian expected, I guess. Because you were
Well,
right in the middle of that. So what did you think?
I don't remember what I thought then. I eventually got fairly radical with my vegetarianism. I did become vegan, and then I ended up pretty much eating nuts and seeds is where I was getting my protein. And my doctor kind of rebelled and said that I just can't do that anymore. As I was aging, I needed stronger protein. So that got me on a different path. But at Michigan, there were arguments. Michigan was like a little petri dish of what's feminism going to look like if we were like, on the moon by ourselves, what it become. There were a lot of arguments and I guess self-criticism sessions, you could call them, struggle sessions. And I know some women were trying to, um, uh, what did they do? They brought in meat surreptitiously, and that was highly not allowed. So I was always pretty. I think I don't remember the argument between Botch and me. I would imagine she would be very hardcore vegan. But I was, I think, more middle of the line, even though I became totally vegan myself, in even proto or even more vegan with just the nuts and seeds, and certainly not dairy or anything or anything more. Like I think I can't remember if I didn't wear leather. It's the splitting of hairs and sort of virtual signaling, and how pure are you in your vegetarianism and veganism, I don't think is very constructive. And I found that in those circles, it was maybe it's just the people I was running with. It became too much orthodoxy and policing people's habits and stuff. And I don't know. I think I would still be vegan, but for health reasons. I didn't get in it for health reasons. I got in it from a spiritual and ethical perspective, but I ended up moving away from vegetarianism. For me, more for health reasons. And I know that is highly debated. That doesn't have to be true. Um, but I just know for myself, it made a difference for my health. I was going to the gym at the time and lifting weights, and I very much noticed a difference when, heaven forbid, I'm even saying this, but I started eating meat at my doctor's orders, and it did make a difference in my whole physical abilities and feeling full. I never felt truly full. I don't know. I don't want to discount it. This was just for me. I support veganism for others. It just didn't work for me. And my sister to this day is vegetarian, but I'm just not. So I feel like a traitor on some level, but I support other people doing it. It just didn't work for me.
Yeah, well, so it seems like it's a bit upsetting because it was a big part of your identity and
Yeah,
politics.
it took me a while. It was very upsetting. It took me a long while. She insisted I get some other protein. So I started with eggs. And then she said my cholesterol was too high. So I then switched to fish. And she said, well, there's too much mercury in the oceans or whatever. You're going to have to start eating organic or organic meat of sorts. And I pretty much stuck to chicken. And I'm sorry for the chickens. But I have to admit, I did, maybe it's, excuse to justify the direction that I moved in, but I did start reading, going deeper into other philosophies, indigenous people who are very close to the earth and see the ebb and flow of nature and life. And they are definitely many indigenous peoples are not vegan at all. I investigated more spiritual groups that still didn't necessarily outlaw meat, and other philosophies that talk about how we maybe prioritize some animals versus others. I think in Tibetan Buddhism, kill a cow, it's better than killing a whole bunch of chickens. So just these different kinds of ideas. And also in our guts, we have all kinds of live beings. They're infinitesimal. So does size matter? Um, I just started looking at all different ways of thinking about it, and animals kill animals. We are animals, but we're not allowed to kill or eat other animals, and that's very much part of the whole um, um, circle of life. And so I know that can be excused if you are indigenous and Native American. Somehow that's hands off. A few people will challenge that. Um, but I don't know. It's still sort of a quandary for me because I did believe so much in the importance of it. But also, I've become very concerned about how um, the uh, the people trying to rule our planet are demanding that people be vegan, and and they're creating fake food to support this agenda. It's part of the whole thing of you will have nothing and you will be happy. World Economic Forum, these philosophies that are coming out and co-opting what I am never going to tell somebody who's vegan, oh, don't be vegan, that's bad. But I think they're co-opting it so that they're not allowing people who do eat meat and maybe hunt for it in more respectful ways as opposed to canned hunts or whatever. I'm obviously totally opposed to things like that and factory farming. Um, and I feel that if you have a doctrinaire stance of veganism, there's a possibility that you're going to feed into this new world order that is not allowing any meat at all, not because they have an ethical or spiritual reason. It's because they want to control people, what we eat, 15-minute cities, where can we go? There's a very much a new fascist order trying to take form, and to see veganism as being co-opted that and being and even this fake food that they're saying that we're going to have it's just appalling to me that people might not recognize how they're being used.
Hmm. Well, believe it or not, quite a few of those aspects, perhaps not the last point you made, but quite a few of those aspects of your argument did surface in your earlier debates with Batya and
Okay.
others. So it does seem like that this has been a lifelong sort of questioning. And I'm going to ask you this, and you can answer, take it however you want based on what we just talked about. But the book is going to be called Vegan Feminism. So to you, how would you envision vegan feminism? How would you understand that or define it even?
Okay. Well, one point I would like to make is I am totally okay being in a book like that because there was a time in my life when I wholeheartedly supported it with me myself. And so now, even though I still consider myself an ecofeminist and I still consider myself an animal liberation adherent, um, the vegan and just plain feminism aren't part of it for me, but I can still support being in a book like that. And so the way I would see vegan feminism moving forward is to um, not allow the co-optation because it's kind of moving in a direction. Just I know there's a no meat stance, but now when arch enemies are also saying no meat for the people, um, they're saying no cars either. And I've always been opposed to cars. I've always had bicycles, and now that they want to make these 15-minute cities that obviate almost having a car, what kind of world are they? They're gaslighting us, and they're getting us to believe that they're on our side with these eco kind of choices that we want to make. And so I think it's really important for vegan feminists to not just walk the talk in a doctrinaire way so that they're holier than thou. And I'm not saying that that is how you could describe vegan feminism, but that we do have to be aware, keep aware that there are other there's the ruling class, the oligarchy is they see more success in that, more people moving towards that in feminism. Well, I even see with feminism how they've warped it and weaponized it. I am not, when I saw the Me Too movement, it's like, that's not my feminism. I have not been in favor of where that has gone. I would still call myself an ecofeminist, but now they've, in this postmodern world where everything becomes relative and it reduces any kind of understanding of what things are actually about, that makes, when you break things down like that, it makes it ripe for co-optation and takeover and warping and weaponizing. And so I would just advise that those who truly want to be vegan feminists not be so rigid about it that they would side with a group that says no meat and not understand that those very people who are trying to push this worldwide on our species have ulterior motives. And so keep a bigger picture, a broader lens to see beyond what might your own values be and how that might be used.
Mm. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely congruent with how I would understand vegan feminism. It's just being critical of power, being intersectional in your analysis, considering it's not specifically and always about just this tiny intersection of women and other animals, but something so much more complex and broader, and always keeping your wits about you.
Yes.